Hi, everyone. Oh my goodness, it's so nice to be back with the Vitamin Lab practitioners. We always have such a good group, and it's really an honor to present to you tonight on a topic that I'm really pumped about this one. It's really important, and I really am pleased that I feel like the perimenopause discussion is coming to the forefront. I'm not sure how I spelled perimenopause there. Let me just fix that. But I really feel as though there's a huge opportunity for us to do a lot of good work. And I want to present to you a new way of thinking about perimenopause that gets to the root cause of a lot of the symptoms that can be quite nebulous. Women can come in with hot flashes, with night sweats, with insomnia, with anxiety, with frozen shoulder, with sore muscles, with digestive upset, with their hair falling out, with there's just a whole constellation of symptoms. But I'm going to simplify it for you today because there is a root cause and it's going to make a lot of sense to you. And I think some of you are going to really be on board with what I'm saying tonight. If you're not already treating in this way, I think I'm going to give you a little bit of perspective on how to get to the root cause. Okay, so let's start with why. Let's get to a simple understanding of a pivotal time in a woman's life. And this is not 6 months. Menopause is maybe the time. Well, menopause is when you have your last period and then you go 12 months and you haven't had a period. Okay, that's maybe menopause. And then there's post-menopause. But perimenopause is a whole period of time that, no pun intended there, that's on average about 8 years, where a woman's hormones are fluctuating and changing. And even within that 8 years, it can be a real roller coaster. And let's be honest, women aren't just dealing with perimenopause. They could have an autoimmune condition. They could have high blood pressure. They could just be stressed out with their job. So it's just a whole span of life. And I also feel like women are like just getting into their stride a lot of times in their 40s and early 50s, where it's like their job's locked in, they have the house, they have the kids, or, they've figured stuff out. 20s and 30s can be hard. And then they get hit with these perimenopausal symptoms. And I just really want them to get the help they need, because at any given time, it's estimated there is 1 billion women on the planet that are dealing with perimenopausal symptoms. So this isn't some obscure problem that like rarely happens. This is happening to the women that you love. It may be happening to you. It will be happening for me probably in not too distant future. So let's talk about this pivotal time, the root cause. We're going to talk about botanicals and key nutrients. We're going to break them down and get nerdy. I love that for us. And delightful prescribing. Maze your patients and build your brand. And I also think if you treat perimenopause well, you're going to have some loyal patients, because these women are frustrated. They can be really suffering, and oftentimes they're suffering in silence. And the pharmaceutical options of like antidepressants and sometimes the HRT, there's nothing really wrong with either of those. I'm not coming down on those, but a lot of women want to explore their options. They feel like something else is going on here. I don't necessarily want to take an SSRI. So hey, I'm Dr. Lydia. Vitamin Lab has asked me to do this presentation for you. Love the folks at Vitamin Lab, and they're always thinking about how to come up with great formulas for you guys. So let's get into it. Let's talk about perimenopause. I've been a naturopath for 14 years. I've dealt with a lot of perimenopause over my career, as many of us have, I'm sure. So this is something near and dear to my heart. I also have a specialty helping Black women with perimenopause, because there can be some unique challenges there. If you have any questions about that, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll be looking at the chat from time to time. Okay, so start with why. Why are we here? As I mentioned, there's 1 billion women on the planet at any given time. And let's create a simple understanding of this pivotal time in a woman's life, because I feel like even as practitioners, it can be kind of an overwhelming topic when we list off all of the different symptoms that women can come in with. And, we certainly want to help them, because it's really hard when you're not sleeping. It's really hard when you're in a meeting and your face is red and you're sweating. It's really hard when you're anxious driving to work in the morning and you never were an anxious person before. Like this, it just sucks. So let's get to the bottom of it, because we can. This isn't going to be a surprise to anybody, but this is why I think our advancements in perimenopause have been snail pace slow. So when we look at the R&D spend, research and development spend, in terms of biopharma research, this would be American statistics, there's $198 billion spent. for those on women's cancers. One of them are on all other female conditions, all other things, anything from fertility to gynecology. But menopause is about 13% of that spend. So that's like 0.0013% of research dollars are going towards this condition. And we have 1 billion women on the planet going through this. So this is nonsensical in my mind. And this is why, as practitioners, we really need to take it upon ourselves to educate as best we can, be up to date with the research, and be trying different things with our patients, and be open to all of the options available to us, because I'm going to prove to you tonight there's actually a lot we can do here. So there is one thing I want you to take away from this talk today, and it's the root cause of all perimenopausal symptoms. And I know that's a big statement. Some of you are like, Lydia, all perimenopausal symptoms? Yeah, I'm going to show you what I mean, okay? And we're not going to talk about a hormone, bioidentical hormones or hormone replacements, because that's not what Vitamin Lab does, but I am a fan. I use them. I think they're great. And I think particularly if we can be initiating those early on in the process, we can get a tremendous amount of benefit and have a lot of long-term benefits that go way into the future, even if you taper off them eventually. But that's a topic for another time. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these things, okay? So I was looking through the research, and let's look at some of these titles and the journals that they're published in, okay? It's going to make a lot of sense to you. So estrogen immunoneuromodulation disorders and menopausal depression. Okay, so we have estrogen communicating with the immunoneurological system. So that would be our psychoneuroimmunological system, the PNI, which is it's just so fascinating. That whole system is just so interesting to me, how it's all interconnected. But you'll see this research from June 2024, but please notice the journal that it's published in, the Journal of Neuroinflammation. And then we have this study from 2020, Perimenopause in Women's Life, a systemic inflammatory phase that enables neurodegenerative diseases. This was kind of a scary article, if I'm totally honest with you. And we was talking about Alzheimer's and dementias and things of that nature, and how estrogen can impact those processes. But again, we're looking at the Journal of Neuroinflammation. Okay, let's talk about bone mineral density, okay? Osteopenia, osteoporosis, another negative consequence of menopause that if it's gone untreated. So we have systemic immune inflammation as it relates to bone mineral density. And they found that there were inflammatory processes impacting bone mineral density. Okay, like that's different than the mood thing we were looking at in the previous slide, but we're looking at the Frontiers of Immunology journal. That's from 2022, and it's a section of inflammation that it's published in. And okay, we can see the association of oxidative stress and pro-inflammation with insomnia in perimenopause. Okay, insomnia, osteoporosis, those aren't the same things, but we can see there's a theme happening here in the Journal of Women's Health. This is from March 2024. There's a pro-inflammatory component to sleep and insomnia. Okay, published the Open Access Journal, PLOS1, gotta love that one. Even back in 2017, circulating interleukin-8, IL-8, cytokine, and tumor necrosis factor alpha are associated with hot flashes in healthy postmenopausal women. Okay, we're seeing inflammatory markers being associated with hot flashes, different than the bone mineral density, different than the neuroinflammation, not the same as the insomnia, but we're seeing inflammatory processes. And then we had, this just came out in 2024. I'm sorry, I cut off the date, but the big journal of menopause, called Menopause, Systemic Inflammation and Menopausal Symptomology, Insights from Postmenopausal Women. They found that women that had higher circulating markers of inflammation had more difficult, they had more stressful ratings on the menopausal rating scale. So perimenopause is a pro-inflammatory problem. It is across the board with all the different symptoms, whether it's pain, whether it's digestion, whether there's neuroinflammation, whether it's hot flashes, insomnia, osteoclast activation causing osteoporosis. We're having pro-inflammatory processes happening, and we can target these pathways and help these women. And when we target these pathways, we don't have to work on insomnia by itself and osteoporosis by itself, and we don't have to silo these different conditions. We can create a treatment plan that helps with inflammation in general, and it will work across the board. And then if you're using hormones on top of it, you're going to get such good results. And the thing is that this critical period of time of life, you're also preventing the insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes that some people have in their family. And a lot of women gain that belly weight around the middle, and it just pisses them off, let's be honest, because they're working out and eating exactly as they were before, and now all of a sudden they have a tire around their middle. They're not happy about that. Well, insulin resistance is a pro-inflammatory condition, right? So we can help with these problems, the cardiovascular disease, which is what's going to kill most North Americans. It's the number one cause of all-cause mortality. Well, not all cause, but the number one cause of mortality is a cardiovascular problem, which is a pro-inflammatory condition that happens probably starting in your 40s or 30s that just accumulated over time. So if we can get ahead of things that like dementia and osteoporosis and diabetes and cardiovascular disease, like we are really helping people. And the thing is that there isn't really a great pharmaceutical equivalent that you're just going to want to go on for years and years from when you're 40 to when you're 102. You're not going to want to be on an NSAID or a corticosteroid or the disease marker specific, the DMARDs. They're like disease specific kind of like for rheumatoid arthritis, like anti-inflammatories like that, antihistamines or immunosuppressive drugs, like all the classes of anti-inflammatory drugs. They're very helpful for short-term conditions. And okay, if you have Crohn's disease or rheumatoid arthritis, maybe you need to be on something, or you've had an organ transplant, sure, be on methotrexate or whatever is, appropriate. But you've hot flashes. You don't want to be on an anti-inflammatory for the rest of your life. So what are the options? We have the options. We can help with these pro-inflammatory pathways. And there's actually so many herbs and botanicals. Like I could be here for 5 hours talking about that. We're not going to do that. I won't do that to you, but so let's get into some of the pro-inflammatory pathways we can target, just some. Okay, we're going to talk about 3. So let's talk about IL-6. That's a big one that came up over and over again in the research. This systemic immune inflammation index was actually new to me, but I love it. I'm going to share with you what it is because it's a simple blood test. If you run a CBC, you're going to be running the components of this test, and you can do a calculation that is shown in the research to correlate to perimenopause symptoms. So it's an evidence-based way of checking for inflammation in your patients. And TNF alpha, another common one. Okay, so let's look at IL-6, and I want you to think about this over the long term, because these inflammatory markers are extremely helpful in the short term. Like if you have an acute infection, if you're playing pickleball and you trip and sprain your ankle, like more power to you, produce some IL-6, but you don't want to have this going on from when you're 42 to 52, not at all, okay? Let's just look at a few of the things. So we're having our sort of intelligent, our immune system, our lymphocytes, the B cells and CD4 T cells being activated over the long term. Not great. If you have an autoimmune condition, this is not great. We're having proliferation of keratinocytes. So that's thickened skin, rougher skin. If you have psoriasis, this is a disaster for you. We have proliferation of mesangial cells. I think that's how you say that. But those are really fibrotic cells that create sort of fibrous tissues that, okay, if you have a scar, but like you don't want that in your endothelium. You can have hypocoagulation and anemia of inflammation and amyloid A, amyloidipsis in your liver, which is not good. Amyloid A is like a fibrotic deposit that damages liver cells. None of this is good. You can just get growth of cells. Okay, well, that sounds like a route to the big C word to me, cancer, which is not good, including the angiogenesis that you can get. If you have rosacea, this definitely isn't good. But if you're, if there's any sort of tumor production, we definitely don't want angiogenesis just running rampant in our bodies. And it also, look at this, osteoclast differentiation. So osteoblasts build bone, right? And osteoclasts kill bone. That's sort of how I remember it. So also here we have a root cause for osteoporosis right here. So we can't have IL-6 just running rampant. But the research was showing this is what was happening in perimenopausal women in so many different types of symptoms. It was wild. It blew my mind when I was reading the research. With TNF alpha, similar thing. So this is a type of cytokine. I don't know if it's a leukotriene or a cytokine. I can't really remember. But again, look at all these pro-inflammatory things, recruiting neutrophils, which are just, they're pretty indiscriminate. They degranulate and create all kinds of havoc in your body. And it's great, again, if you have a bacterial or infection. But if you don't want neutrophils popping off all the time. We have macrophages going nuts. mast cells. So if you have an allergy or you have that potential towards that sort of histamine release, like not good, eosinophils, so that Th2 allergic response. If you have any type of allergy, again, but eosinophils, again, these are our immune cells, they're effective because they're destructive, right? And in the right frame, right context, we want that destruction, but you don't just want T cells and B cells flying around your body activated all the time. And then we can see upregulation of adhesion molecules in the vascular endothelium. Well, this is a good recipe for cardiovascular disease if I've ever seen one. And again, we have fibrotic tissues being produced. So we can see how these two factors, if we just have TNF alpha and IL-6 activated for long stretches of time, and these weren't the only ones, there was IL-8 and IL-1 beta, there were other ones too, but I'm just going to give you the kind of big two. And like this is the root cause of a lot of problems. Okay, so let's look at the systemic immunoinflammatory calculation. So you can get this number with any CBC that you run, right? So you got your platelets. So what you basically are taking are your platelets, so sticky, inflammatory, pro-inflammatory molecules, which are supposed to help with clotting, which is fine if you cut yourself. But if you're not cut or hurt, you don't want platelets just clotting all over the place. That's not a good sign. And then we have neutrophils, which are, again, those immune cells that are non-specific. It's not like we have that sort of innate immune system. Like there's the type that's more intelligent, which is the lymphocytes, you'll see there. And then there's the neutrophils who kind of just, they're bruisers. They float around and they degranulate and they kill things. That's their job, right? And if there's nothing to kill, they're killing your own cells. So we have platelets and neutrophils. We take those really pro-inflammatory things, we multiply them together, and then we divide them by your lymphocyte count. And your lymphocytes are the more intelligent. They're your T cells and B cells. And if they're suppressed, and the platelets and neutrophils are high, that is a recipe for trouble. And they found that over and over again in the menopause research, that women that had this going on in the high range where they weren't feeling all that hot. And then we can also see it can lead to things like cancer and cardiovascular disease. So if we can focus on bringing inflammation down, we're going to be able to manage the symptoms of perimenopause and stop a lot of the negative consequences that could be coming down the line for these women. So this is, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think this is pretty important information. Okay, so let's talk about just some of our botanical immune system regulators. So we already kind of covered that the pharmaceutical immune drugs are not really appropriate for the long-term nature of menopause. So let's use our botanicals. I always like to put pictures because I'm just a visual person. So this is a herb, Glycyrrhiza glabra, which is licorice root. I'm actually drinking that right now. I don't know if you guys go to the Chinese stores ever, but like there's really good Chinese stores that mix like licorice and catnip and really relaxing stuff. But licorice is an amazing herb because it's a demulcent, which means it soothes the digestive tract and the respiratory tract. It has adrenal supporting properties. It's an adaptogen, like in sort of rough terms, it's an adaptogen. But it also has some hormone sort of balancing effects, meaning it will have some estrogen receptor ability to bind, some progesterone receptor ability to bind. So it's very anti-inflammatory to a lot of different body systems. It's actually good for all mucosal membranes, including the vagina being another one, right? So Glycyrrhiza, licorice root, this one was a really popular herb when I graduated, but I feel like it's not as much now. But don't be shy from using licorice. It's actually, it has really good antiviral properties too. So it's great for this time of year, cold and flu season. The deglycerinized version of it will not raise the blood pressure. That's kind of the main concern. But it's safe for short-term use. And if somebody doesn't have high blood pressure, you could use this for, if you want to do a 90-day supply with Vitamin Lab products, easily you could do that. We have turmeric here, turmeric. And I want you to always remember that turmeric is also in the same family as ginger. So turmeric and ginger, while they're not exactly the same, oftentimes you can swap them out or use them synergistically. Ooh, if you want to make a really good like herbal spice blend to cook with, that's really anti-inflammatory, you can take ginger and turmeric and cardamom. They're all from the Zinziberaceae plant family. They're all cousins, and they all have anti-inflammatory properties. And you can mix, so you can do cardamom pops with some ginger and some turmeric, and that's extremely anti-inflammatory. You can add that to your curries or your stir fries or something like that. That's a great power combination that has direct effects against TNF alpha and IL-6, for example, among other things. We have our beautiful green tea here, our EGCG. I always think that black tea will also have some of these properties. Oolong tea is the same thing. It's just roasted slightly differently. And then there's white tea, which is a little bit less roasted than green tea. Then goes white, green, oolong, black tea in terms of roasting. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So we've got EGCG here. So it's wonderful anti-cancer properties, wonderful anti-inflammatory properties here. Rosemary, similar thing. Rosmarinic acid has the impacts on the immune system in terms of being anti-inflammatory, wonderful volatile oils. You can cook with that too. But Vitamin Lab actually has it so where you can encapsulate it. And I don't find that super common, so that's a nice feature to add the rosemary in. Very, very safe. Whenever you're using something that could be used as like a potential food, it often has a good safety profile, so that's kind of great. We have Boswellia serrata. The name serrata is coming from the Latin serratus, and you can see the edges of the leaf are serrated. Boswellia is a really potent anti-inflammatory, particularly for joint issues. I really like using it, but it also is good for digestion, and it is also quite good for mental health. So it's a perfect herb to have around the perimenopause times. I would recommend that herb in the, oh my God, in the women that get frozen shoulder around the perimenopause. To me, frozen shoulder is like, okay, you're definitely in perimenopause. You're one of those women that's worked hard all your life. You're just a really go-getter woman, and then it can take 2 years of rehab for frozen shoulder to really get resolved. So frozen shoulder being that internal rotation pain, or is it external rotation? I guess it kind of happen with either. Because it can happen often if you're putting on your bra and reaching back, or it can happen if you're reaching into the back seat for your purse, or if you have to take a picture and put your arm around somebody, you're just like, oh. So frozen shoulder, Boswellia is a really great one to have. And then you can mix it with some turmeric and some ginger and some rosemary. Like, this is what's fantastic about Vitamin Lab, is you can do these mixy-matchy things. And then we have our Panax ginseng. So ginseng was another herb that was really popular when I graduated that I don't find people use as much anymore, but ginseng, great for the adrenal system. It's more of a warming herb, so good for kind of energy levels, sex drive, that sort of stuff. But yeah, you can use it as an anti-inflammatory too. So these are just like, I'm just literally scratching the surface of the botanicals that we have as immune system regulators. But don't forget about these herbs, and don't forget to use them in perimenopause and mix and match. And let's be honest, you might be experimenting a little bit, but when the woman comes down and sits in front of you with her symptoms, you'll be able to differentiate a little bit between the ones that you want to use. But you can't really go wrong with any of these, to be honest. And then let's talk about our nutrient inflammation regulators. Okay, so I always like to get nerdy with this because I really feel like it's important to understand the chemical structure of some of our most prescribed ingredients. And I want you to have a little bit of a reference point. And because in my mind, we actually should be able to identify from looking at the chemical structure if we really know our stuff, right? So this is vitamin D. This is vitamin D. How do we know? This is vitamin D3. This is 1,25 hydroxy vitamin D, cholecalciferol, basically. There is a hydroxy group at the 3 position, but that's it's not as important for docking into the vitamin D receptor. These two are important, so they kind of don't mention it. I don't know why the chemists decide to do that, but this hydroxy group doesn't really get mentioned. But we have the steroid backbone, and we have this, at each corner is going to be like a CH3, right? Like a little methyl group. So we have this long chain methyl group. This is what makes vitamin D fat soluble. Okay. This little bit of polarity here with the OH, but it's really this group here that makes it flexible. That's going to help it go through the bilipid bilayer into the cell, right? The phospholipid bilayer into the cell. This is vitamin D, steroid backbone, 1,25 hydroxy. That's going to lock into the VLDR receptors. And we have this chain here that makes it fat soluble. Magnesium is really important for down-regulating all types of inflammatory markers. It's just an extremely important mineral. If people aren't eating enough nuts, seeds, veggies, I don't think we can go wrong with supplementing magnesium. I want to point out the magnesium bisglycinate version. There's citrate versions, threonate versions, malate versions, oxide versions, like the list goes on. But let's do the bisglycinate version because this is the most popular one. So the bisglycinate, so it's basically magnesium attached to 2 glycine molecules. Glycine is our teeny tiniest amino acid. I can explain why that is. It maybe isn't that relevant, but we have the amine group, we have the carboxylic acid group, and then this is going to be a C with an H attached, that little piece in there. I don't know if I have a pen. I don't really. Oh, let's go back. Okay, so yeah, but that's magnesium bisglycinate. So why magnesium bisglycinate is so well absorbed? This is a teeny tiny little molecule here, this glycine, our smallest amino acid. It's got good polarity with these oxygens, so it kind of sneaks in without needing active transport. So you don't need like a magnesium transporter to like gobble up the magnesium and bring it in past the intestinal lumen to go to first pass to the liver. Magnesium kind of like sneaks into the club with their glycine friends. Like that's kind of how I think about it. So yeah, glycine is really well absorbed. And over here we have resveratrol. So this is another big nutrient inflammatory regulator. It is an antioxidant. So what's going to happen with resveratrol here is this OH group here is going to act like the antioxidant. It's going to donate electrons. And the reason it can donate electrons so well and neutralize oxidized things is because of these benzene groups. So these double bonds here, I don't know if you remember that, those are electrons floating around inside. They kind of act like a very stable structure, and the electrons are floating around here. And so resveratrol has a lot of electrons to donate. This here will probably act like a docking station because resveratrol is not only an antioxidant, it also is like a regulator, like a communicator. It attaches to cells and DNA in particular, like the DNA structures inside the cell, and will tell it how to behave. So this is resveratrol. So hopefully it's helpful to see these things kind of in person. Let's talk about glutathione. Okay, don't get overwhelmed with this picture. I'm just going to show you the difference here between reduced glutathione and oxidized glutathione, because you're going to want the reduced version, which is what Vitamin Lab has, and this is the difference between it. Okay, so glutathione is essentially 3 amino acids mashed together. We have glutamate, we have cysteine, and we have glycine. Okay, so glutamate basically offers a water solubility to the product. That's its function, more or less. Glycine, being a small amino acid, adds flexibility to the product. So we have water solubility, we have flexibility, and then we have cysteine. And this is why NAC, or N-acetylcysteine, will upregulate glutathione. And this is the antioxidant moiety in glutathione. So this thiol group here, sulfur with a hydrogen, this is what donates electrons here. So sulfur actually has 2 electrons to donate, which means it's good antioxidant overall because it can donate more than 1 electron, but it also is why glutathione can help regulate or can help neutralize copper, iron, zinc, heavy metals that are going rogue. Glutathione will come and pick them up because those both are like copper's a +2, iron's a +2, it has a +3 too, but iron's mostly a +2, and zinc is a +2. And glutathione has 2 electrons to donate. So it can neutralize heavy metals that are floating around wreaking havoc, because it's not good. Like, it's great to have iron like within the context of hemoglobin, but iron overload where iron's just floating around your system is extremely toxic, really not good for you, et cetera, et cetera. And the case goes for all those heavy metals. Good when they're doing their job, bad when they're just hanging out, on the block. We don't want that. So glutathione will come and pick up those guys using this sulfite group. So this is why N-acetylcysteine helps with glutathione. So this is glutathione in a reduced form. Reduced meaning it has electrons to donate. In an oxidized form, it attaches to itself. You can see there's a disulfide bond there. And so this is where it's kind of neutralized. It doesn't really do its job. You can see that sulfur is not really available to do the work. But there is a glutathione reductase enzyme, I'm pretty sure it's that simple, that comes and cleaves this. So that's a very important enzyme, and then it can go back and do its work. So our body actually has an enzyme specifically to regenerate glutathione because it's so important for us. So that's what glutathione is. Also important for inflammation. So you can make products with glutathione, with NAC, whatever you prefer. Okay, so I'm going to review some classic menopausal botanicals as well. So in general, what these botanicals tend to do is they interact with progesterone and estrogen receptors. Some of them have phytoestrogens, but not all. Some of them just have attachment points, docking stations. I always think about it like lock and key theory, like docking stations that, can mimic progesterone and estrogen. So they're not progesterone and estrogen, but they can mimic. So that's how they help. They have a gentle effect. So it's not the same as giving a bioidentical hormone by any means, but some women are okay with a more gentle effect, particularly if we can get a strong anti-inflammatory response. So a fish oil would also probably be really important here too. They also interact with serotonin and dopamine receptors, NMDA too, a more excitatory neurotransmitter, and GABA receptors, a more inhibitory neurotransmitter. So oftentimes they have a dual effect of interacting with, well, they have kind of a quadruple effect. So steroid hormone receptors, we're looking at neurotransmitter receptors. They can often talk to the HPA axis. So they will talk to the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus pituitary gland, and get it communicating with the adrenal glands and also with the ovaries. So some of what they do is they kind of kick that process into gear, because really during perimenopause, you have a lot of LH and FSH being secreted to try to get your ovaries to get working, right? So it's a lot of these drugs, a lot of these botanicals do help with that. And then on top of it, they usually have anti-inflammatories. Like, I just love botanical medicine because I just feel like they're such perfect. Like, we could never make a drug that's this perfect. It's just darn perfect. Love these things. Okay, so we have sage. Sage does have phytoestrogens. It also has antioxidants that are quite good for cognition and the brain. We have maca. Maca is more of a nutritive. I feel like it has a lot of B vitamins in it, and it can interact with testosterone and estrogen receptors. We have black cohosh here, Simicifuga or racemosa. So this one here tends to interact more so with estrogen receptors. Also quite good for the HPA axis, also quite anti-inflammatory. And then we have chasteberry here, which is Vitex agnus castus. And that one tends to work a little bit more on progesterone. So yeah, really good. Also anti-inflammatory. So these are kind of the classic ones, particularly the black cohosh and the Vitex or chasteberry. And then this one, I just added berberine in here because I feel like berberine is another very anti-inflammatory herb, very nice for the liver, blood sugar regulating, helping with insulin resistance, like, good combination here. Okay, so I think the most important takeaway is that, okay, we have inflammatory processes happening, but we're not treating inflammation, we're treating people, right? So I think that this is the perfect opportunity for individualized care. And I think that most of the women that are coming to us with perimenopause symptoms, that's what they want. They don't want just a perimenopause supplement necessarily off the shelf and given to them. Like, they can pretty much go and do that themselves at a health food store. They want somebody to listen to them and be like, okay, you have frozen shoulder, you're waking up with a headache every day, you're passing a lot of blood clots on your period, like that really can itemize sort of what is going on here and then create a symptom picture and prescribe appropriately. So the goal is to create a long-term relationship, because again, she's not going through menopause for 6 months. Like, this is like a decade. So let's create a long-term relationship. If you are doing bioidentical hormones or hormone replacement therapy of any type, let's initiate hormones as early as possible because we do get better results. Here's how it was explained to me. Estrogen is very good at preventing problems, but it's not so great at treating problems. So we really want to get ahead of this. And so, yeah, I think that makes sense to you. And then let's experiment with anti-inflammatory botanicals. Let's start using them. I always love this quote because it's like from 1400s or something, Paracelsus. Medicine is not merely a science, but it is an art. And like, our character does add a lot to the patient experience and how they feel about what they're taking and how confident they are. So let's really listen to them and try different things and really get to the root of inflammation and explain to them why as well we're focusing on inflammation and how this is for short-term and long-term health. I do think custom formulating with Vitamin Lab is the pinnacle of prescribing. When you're putting together your own things, whether you're micronutrient testing or you're just coming up with your own formulas, you're ahead of the game. Okay, a lot of doctors are not doing this. That's why I love talking to you guys, quite frankly, is because I know we have such a solid group of practitioners that really care and go above and beyond. Like, will come to a webinar at 8 o'clock at night if you're EST like me. So it's the art of medicine. You're listening, you're prioritizing, you have empathy, and you have your instincts and experience. And then you're also integrating research. So I just presented you with quite a bit of research tonight, not full studies, but you could see where I was going with it, and interpretation of lab reports and like that SII. equation, looking at the platelets and the neutrophils over the lymphocytes, like I don't think many doctors like are really running that. Like I could see it in research papers, but like I don't know if anybody here is running that. Please let me know. But that seems like a super easy test if we're running CBCs anyways, and it's like such a great marker of inflammation that's evidence-based. So we can totally do that. When you're formulating, really, you don't have competition because you're making your own things. You're creating loyalty and you can make some money, which is really important. This is what I don't want. I don't want your patients going to Amazon and Googling things and finding products and just taking them. Like I want them taking your products, preferably with your brand on them, because Vitamin Lab can white label. So if you're not doing that, do it. Okay, so let's just do a little case study. I always like doing a case study. And I chose this woman specifically. She's quite a pretty woman there. But do you see how she's smiling with her mouth, but she's not smiling with her eyes? Like, and I feel like that is women in perimenopause. Like we have to smile, like we have to show up at work and we're on the PTA and we're at the soccer practice and we're smiling and we, but internally we're like, I haven't slept in 6 days and I have diarrhea and like, I'm anxious all the time and it hurts when I have sex. And like, so this was just like so perfect to me, just having the real smile, but kind of dead behind the eyes. Like I could kill somebody right now. So she comes to you and she's like, I can't sleep. Like I cannot sleep. And she says she's getting her period every 3 weeks. So she's getting that shortened cycle. She's passing a lot of clots and she doesn't have cramps, but her back is sore. Okay. So we know there's inflammatory processes here. There's clotting factors happening here. Her period's shortening. Okay. She's getting there. She's in the zone. She has a big presentation at work next week. And when I don't sleep, I look and feel crazy and my face is puffier than usual. The puffy face thing to me always is like a cortisol piece. It's not always, but it can be. So again, a marker of inflammation is happening here. And like, I like these women are at like the pinnacle of their careers. They're like peak level, they're performing, they've been working since they were 16 years old, like they're making the money, they've got the house, they've got the dog, they got, they can vacation with their friends, but they feel crazy sometimes. So let's help her. And she has a weird pain in her shoulder. I'm having trouble doing up my bra. So she's got that classic frozen shoulder piece. So, and this is not uncommon. Like all of us are going to have patients that come in that can't sleep or are getting their period, getting clots or bleeding, having accidents. Like I treat a lot of Black women and their experience is frequently that all of a sudden they're bleeding through their pants. They haven't done that since they were 15 years old in high school or something like that. And then now they're having emergencies and accidents and they're 49 years old, like crazy making. Okay, so I always think about this should say inflammatory support. I'll have to change that. So I always think about things kind of in a Chinese medicine perspective. It's just sort of how I break down things. So I always think about what botanicals can really help, or like our core nutrients, and then supportive ingredients. If there's anticipatory support, this is a bit more advanced prescribing if you want to get into these two here. But you can anticipate what might be coming down the pipeline. So we could add a little, maybe she has a history of diabetes in her family. Okay, so let's add some berberine in or something like that. And then if there's any weak pathways, maybe she's constipated, for example, she's not pooping regularly. Okay, we could add some fiber in or maybe a little bit of aloe to help as a laxative. So this is sort of just a framework that you can use. Which will help you kind of focus, because I'm not necessarily a fan of the kitchen sink where you're just kind of throwing everything in at once. Like that just gets, that's not the best, I would say. Okay, so let's formulate for Christy. Okay, so share this tab instead. Okay, so I've gone in, made a thing for Christy. Let's edit her formula. Okay, so let's do a 90-day formula and we'll reassess. We'll do capsules. Vitamin Lab does have the option of powders, but let's do capsules because it just makes things easier. If you want to see the women's health products that Vitamin Lab has, you can always search by condition and go into women's health. Okay, so that'll kind of narrow it down for you. Okay, so she's not sleeping well, and she's not sleeping well. She's got clots going on. And she feels kind of crazy and she feels puffy, which would say to me there's some cortisol issues happening. So let's think about how we can create something anti-inflammatory for her. There's nothing wrong with using the classic menopausal herbs like black cohosh. We could add that in. I'm just going to use standard dosing here. You have the reference range dosing here as well. But let's just keep it keep it reasonable. And let's use chasteberry. So those are kind of that's sort of a classic backbone. I really do like sage. Let's see if they have sage. I'm pretty sure we do. Rosemary sage, yay. Okay, so let's use some sage too. I find that one's particularly relaxing at night, and it really helps release some of the heat that happens at night. And then we can add in other anti-inflammatories for her. Like I said, with the frozen shoulder, I definitely want to search for some boswellia here. So let's add in a good dose of boswellia. We could definitely throw in some turmeric as another anti-inflammatory. So now we have some joint support as well. And then one herb that's often not thought of, but is very helpful for anything clot related is ginkgo. Ginkgo has that sort of anticoagulant factor to it. So she's passing clots. I'd like to give her some ginkgo. It's also going to help with circulation to the noggin, which is helpful. And I would also add in an adaptogen probably to this. So we could do glycyrrhiza. Yeah. And you'll see that it's deglycyrinizated. That's, some of these words, botanical words, sometimes you're like, can you make it easy on me, please? So this one is not going to cause any type of high blood pressure. So you can just add maybe like a little bit of that in, 100 milligrams, and maybe you want to give her some magnesium. I'll give magnesium glycine, or maybe you want the 3 and 8. The 3 and 8 crosses the blood-brain barrier a little bit better to help with sleep. It doesn't have as much elemental magnesium in it. Actually, this one can actually make the capsule count kind of high. Let's use the magnesium. She has some back pain. Magnesium malate is quite good for physical pain. So let's add in maybe some magnesium malate. So now we have a formula that is addressing perimenopausal symptoms, that is addressing inflammation, that is helping with circulation and preventing clotting, because you might be getting some back pain because maybe the uterus is having trouble with the clots that it's trying to pass. We have something for that's a demulcent, which will soothe and coat the digestive tract and the vagina, all of those things with the licorice. And then we have some magnesium. You can't find this product anywhere. You can't. Where are you going to go on Amazon? Good luck. You're never finding this. So we have a completely unique product for her. We can calculate the price and the capsules, 4 capsules a day, reasonable to take, $138 a month. But again, she can't find this product anywhere else. She'd have to buy separate bottles of all these different things. This might come together, the black cohosh with the chasteberry and sage. She might be able to find that, but she would need separate magnesium, and she would need separate turmeric, and she would need separate ginkgo, and probably boswellia. I haven't often seen that mixed with the deglycerinized licorice. So she'd be buying like 6 different bottles of product. Like, this is a busy woman. She has a presentation next week. She doesn't have time to take 6 different bottles of product. So this is what makes Vitamin Lab awesome, in my opinion. You know, we can formulate something, probably took me 3-5 minutes to do or something, and we have just a really cool, unique product. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so going back, the elephant in the room is kind of like, what if I don't know what I'm doing? What if I screw this up? What if I don't know about these herbs, etc.? Just please know Vitamin Lab has your back. Like, the people that work there really care about your success and you guys making amazing products. They receive a lot of input, both from customers who are receiving the product and practitioners, and there's a lab team and a formulary team. And so they're always talking about the function of the product, palatability. So Vitamin Lab is all in. That's why they've commissioned me to do this presentation tonight. So reach out to your account manager. Don't be shy. If you have questions about this, they will help you formulate and figure out something, especially if you're trying something new. Like, maybe this is a new concept for you to be using more anti-inflammatories in your Vitamin Lab products, specifically for perimenopause. But I just think if we can get ahead of the inflammation in this time of life, like the outcomes, the prevention of potential disease consequences is just, and maybe I'm not saying we can prevent everything. We certainly can't, eventually we're all going to go. But if we can delay certain processes or not have people suffering through, perimenopause symptoms and then getting osteoporosis or having to be on high blood pressure medication or high cholesterol, like no wonder women are really struggling. What to avoid. This is my picture of a kitchen sink. Like, I added in, that was probably like 7 or 8 different ingredients. It was 4 capsules a day. Like, that's pretty reasonable, I think. But although, we have one practitioner I worked with, she would do mega formulas, like 16 capsules a day, 20 capsules a day. And she was perfectly fine and successful. And her patients loved her and she was awesome. So I don't know. I'm just one person giving you what I think. I do think, though, you're more likely to have some adverse reactions or just tummy upset and diarrhea if you're adding in a whole bunch of different things. So, try to be targeted with what you think your core ingredients are, which is kind of what I went through. I did the Vitex and the chasteberry and the sage. Okay. Then I thought about, okay, she's having blood clots. Okay, let's add in some support things, and there's some cortisol. So I kind of just layer it on. You see how I went through her symptoms and kind of like pieced it together? Delightful prescribing, amaze your patients, build your brand. Let's do it. Perimenopause protocols. So you should probably have a few of these in your back pocket. So what I really like about Vitamin Lab is that, let's share this tab, you can make protocols. So you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel for each patient. You don't. But you're going to need more than one product, or probably more than 2 products, to treat your perimenopause patients. So what I like is kind of think about what you have coming through the door. Okay, you maybe have anxiety and sleep, so you have a combination there. Lemon balm, passion flower, theanine. That's such a good combination for sleep. Really good, really safe, non-habit forming. And sleep is such a huge issue. And what are you going to do? Put them on benzodiazepine medication that you can't come off after 10 days, so you'll get rebound anxiety and sleep stuff. Like, it's just not a good long-term solution. But these sleep products, you can take them, you can come on and off them, and it's totally fine. You want your daytime hot flashes, the women that have to teach or have to be a doctor or have to do something and they can't afford to be sweating to death at work. Okay, well, we have our Vitax or black cohosh is a core thing. We have some supportive nutrients for the adrenal gland. Holy basil is an amazing cooling herb for the adrenal gland. So sometimes I think about the properties of the herb. Holy basil is cooling, like bushroot is cooling. You can look them up usually and be like, holy basil, Chinese medicine, cooling or hot, and it will tell you if it's a hot or cold kind of remedy. So I'd add in holy basil. We can have a brain boost one where we add in some ginseng and some ashwagandha and bacopa. Bacopa is really good for those neurotropic factors, helping make those brain pathways work. And then you can have a mood uplift like serotonin, SSRI. Medications are technically first-line therapy for menopause, which, based on the pro-inflammatory model, I'm not sure that's completely appropriate, but you may want to have some St. John's wort, 5-HTP, and saffron. Technically, this is what's good about our medicine, functional medicine. So technically, there's an interaction between St. John's wort and 5-HTP. St. John's wort opens up those 5-HT receptors, and then we have 5-HTP, which is a hydroxytryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin. Technically, there's an interaction there. But in my mind, there's a synergy there. You can use those things together. I use them together all the time, and they're fine. Like, you don't want to be mixing antidepressants with those medications, because antidepressants just come in there with more of a sledgehammer approach. But, there's nothing wrong with taking an antidepressant. You need one that's helping you. There's no shade for me, but I just like the fact that with functional medicine, what you're looking at is more of a synergistic approach. And saffron's actually very good for people who are on SSRIs and they've lost their sex drive. Saffron has some research evidence to support women and their sexuality, which is another problem around perimenopause, right? Sometimes the sex drive just dies, and that's not cool for relationships or for women just in general. And I always do an Amazon search of menopause and see what comes up. And it's always a hot mess, guys. This is why we cannot have our patients going to Amazon and looking for products, because this is what they're going to see. This is what I see, at least in Canada. This is what I see. So we've got nourishing creams. We've got, oh my gosh, this really pissed me off, to be honest. This product here says, look at this. I don't know if you can see this. I can't zoom in. Can I zoom in? I don't know if I can. Can I zoom in? Sort of, not really. Advanced bioidentical. They actually used the word bioidentical hormone support in a product on Amazon. I freaked out because a woman is going to look at that and think that she can buy bioidentical hormones on Amazon. This product is like red clover and green tea, and there's no bioidentical hormones in that product. I don't know how they're getting away with saying that, particularly in Canada, because Canada, we're really strict with our NPN numbers and what you can say. And look at this, is Amazon's choice. It's Amazon's choice. And they're saying they have bioidentical hormones in a product when they do not. Bioidentical hormones are very specific chemical structures of estrogen and progesterone, E1, 2, and 3. That's what we got, okay? Well, I don't know if you're using the equine estrogen. Maybe there's 8 different forms, I think, in that product. But it's not red clover. That's not bioidentical estrogen. So that just made me crazy. And then we have books about it, and we have the 7-day difference, and who knows what's happening here. But this is that we've got urine testing kits. I don't know how women navigate this at all, but this is what we're dealing with. These types of products that say they're bioidentical when they're not. So I know you guys get where I'm coming from. Okay, if you're new to Vitamin Lab, on board, meet with Christina. You meet with your account managers, Sarah or Carolina, and then just aim for 1 custom formulation per week in the first month. Like, just get kind of formulated. Some of you are going to be more experienced, like you're going to have done this more. But if you're new, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to use Vitamin Lab for every patient. You don't have to turn your practice upside down, although you may get there because you may develop some protocols, right, where you have them kind of locked in. Because the other thing with Vitamin Lab protocols, you can tweak them. They're not set in stone, but they just give you a starting point. And if you need protocols, you need help making them, your account managers can help you make your protocols. Always remember, Vitamin Lab has your back, okay? They're really here to support you. They want you to be successful. What's really good too is if they come across a formula that looks like it could be problematic, maybe the ingredients are too high, or you formulated a powdered product and it's just going to taste gnarly, really the account managers will reach out to you and kind of be like, are you sure? Like is berberine, for example, doesn't taste very good in a powder at all. So they will check in and make sure that you're good. So yeah, thank you for coming to the webinar. I think you guys get 15% off your next formula. So that's November Web 15. Please take a note of that because it's always nice to get a little sale. Nothing wrong with that, right? So yeah, and if you have questions, practitioners at getvitaminlab.com. Like I said, the whole team is there to support you. Really a fantastic family of people at Vitamin Lab. And yeah, if you have any questions for me, chat's open. Pop a few in the chat. But otherwise, it was fantastic talking to you, and I hope this helped. And I hope we can really work together on getting to the root of inflammation for these women. And because I just know the short-term consequences are going to be good, the long-term consequences are going to be good. And yeah, so my pleasure. Thanks for chatting with you tonight. I don't see any questions, so I will sign off. Oh, wait, maybe there was. Oh, sorry, there is. Q&A. Had frozen shoulder one than the other, more painful overall than natural childbirth. Took 3 years total. Wish I'd known. This just didn't include the pain. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I am so sorry. You had one and then the other. That must have been awful. And look at that, more painful than childbirth. It's horrible. Like you want to go play pickleball. You want to be able to do up your bra. You want to be able to reach up to the top shelf. Like you're like a stiff tin man. You can't do anything. You need all this rehab. So on top of your busy life of like raising kids and being there for your parents and seeing your sister and doing everything, you now have to book in physiotherapy appointments and go 2 or 3 times a week, or massage or acupuncture, whatever your modality is you prefer, chiropractic, osteopath. But no, who's got time for that for 3 years? Oh my gosh. Do you have a chart for when to choose one formula over another for menopause? A chart. I have to think about that one. I don't really have a chart readily available. I have to think about that one. I'm sorry. Taisha, yes, it's going to be posted on YouTube. So it'll be on YouTube. I meant ingredients. Oh, yeah. I find herbal medicine, it's not all that well organized at times. Like with pharmaceuticals, it'll be like NSAID medication, corticosteroids, like blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of people would benefit from finding like a little herbal medicine school in their area or course where they could just take and kind of brush up on some of these herbs. Because I know for some functional medicine practitioners, if you're like a nurse practitioner or you're a medical doctor or something, like herbal medicine wasn't really necessarily a part of your training, and you are like putting together this information. So I can appreciate how difficult that can truly be. Like as a naturopath, we tend to have a little bit more. There's a textbook called Medical Herbalism which is probably kind of the classic text that talks about most of the North American herbs. It won't be the Chinese herbs necessarily. So maybe Medical Herbalism is a good textbook to start with. And they will have a menopause section and an inflammatory section. Yeah, Medical Herbalism. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. You're very welcome. Yeah, so it'll be on YouTube. I don't know if they're publishing transcripts necessarily, so maybe you may have to scroll through. But yeah, I appreciate this can be a lot of information thrown at you guys, but you know what? You can do it. You can mix and match for sure. Come back to this presentation. Medical Herbalism is a good book to look at. And then a lot of actually my friends that are working in the perimenopause space, they're starting to get certified as perimenopause practitioners with the organization. And so there's actually a certification you can do. And I was like, more people need to do this. Like if you have like 25% of your practice is perimenopause, people coming in like this, I think it's the Society of Menopause, the Menopause Society. I feel like they have a certification program that a lot of people are taking now to get brushed up on the latest research, etc. So yeah, I can offer that. But thanks everybody. I really appreciate you coming tonight, and it's been a pleasure. We'll talk again.